Hello there, this is Trade of the Week. Hello and welcome to the programme. Now today it's all about discussing the Aussie dollar to begin with, because that's what Chris Beecham chose last week when he was put in the hot seat, and he decided to go along on it. Initially it was a bit lacklustre, but a change of fortunes today. Josh Mahony is here to explain exactly what I'm talking about. So it's doing rather well now.
Absolutely smashed it in the end, yeah. The last hurdle, an hour before we come on air to start recording this, lo and behold, the payrolls number comes out and it really was a shocker, and the US dollar's been sold off across the board. But ultimately, you know, I mean, it was grinding higher anyway and it was giving him some gains, but now it's really sort of taken off and it looks like a very good call from Chris. You can see ultimately we've sort of reversed round. We clearly seem to be now on a positive trajectory. He was talking about 0.74. That's still a little bit away, but certainly I would be in favour of it getting there as opposed to breaking back into that downtrend that we had throughout May. So certainly it looks like a good call, and good on Chris.
Yeah, good on
Fair
him.
play to him.
And it just shows you never lose faith. It happened.
Then have faith. What have you got?
Exactly. Right, talking about faith, what are you going to do then? What have you got your eyes on?
So this is a difficult one just because... So in the same way that it worked out well for Chris because of this payrolls number, it's not worked out particularly well for me because of the fact that I wanted to go long cable, but it's already now moved probably half of the distance that I wanted it to move. So ultimately we've seen this massive rally in cable, but you know, I wanted to go long cable. I do think we have had this sort of theme running through recent polls talking about how Leave are actually all of a sudden looking like they might be able to get the upper hand. I don't think that's going to happen. I also think people are going to see this as very cheap. If I take it out onto the weekly or even the monthly, let's get on the monthly. There we go. So last 30 years, every time it comes into this zone, it always rallies. This is still very cheap in terms of historical cable levels. Of course, there is the threat of a Brexit, and certainly that has big risks attached to it. Nevertheless, I think that people will probably presume, as if you look at our binary market, it's heavily in favour of us remaining. I have the same opinion. I think we're going to remain, and therefore I think this is a long-term good place to be getting long. Now, if we look at it in a short term, so this is the 4-hour time frame, we can see that we sold off heavily at the back end of last week, and then coming into more recently, you can see we've essentially come past this 76.4, which is where I generally like to get long. We've created this double bottom formation, and now of course we've broken higher because of this NFP number. I would say, because of the fact that we've seen such a strong move in this one direction, I would just essentially take a coin toss of a trade, a 50-50 near enough, that we will get back towards the top end of this range. So let's say 147.20, as opposed to breaking below our previous lows, say 143.70. So essentially you're near enough halfway through the two. This is based mainly upon the fact that we've already seen a massive amount of the move, unfortunately. But I do think we've got further to run. Yes, we're likely to see some retracement. So if there's a retracement, it will give us a better price. But such a shocking number in terms of the payrolls, and also this whole story of dollar really starting to come unwound. I think we're likely to see further selling in terms of the dollar. I think we're going to see upside for cable, so I'll be going long for next week.
All right, long cable. Can you explain exactly, if I was going to do it, where I would put those stops in? Yeah,
so I'll just put in a couple horizontal lines. So essentially you've got this double bottom formation. Of course, if you broke below these two, so let's say around about 143.70 here, then, you know, the thing is, if you put too tight a stop loss, and certainly, you know, we've all found it, everyone starts saying that brokers are stop loss hunting, is this like phrase that people get really annoyed and people write it on Twitter. But it's just the nature of the market that sometimes it doesn't work out perfectly. It seems to always come down to your stop and then go exactly in the direction that you want. So I've learned through the years that you should always add, if you're thinking you're adding a couple, add a couple more, because it helps you, it sort of protects you if it does sort of temporarily flush past the level and then move higher. So I'd put it around about 143.70. Again, we'll be looking at, you've got two peaks here. I'll be looking at the sort of nearer term peak. You're looking around about 14,720, which is your peak from the 31st of May. I do think we're likely to reach that. Again, this is sort of more of a play on the historically cheap level of cable and the fact that I think the Remain is going to win, and I think that as polls continue to come out, we're likely to see that theme come back into play, and that's really going to probably get people back on board in terms of cable.
And obviously we've got those debates this week on ITV as well, I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, of course,
Farage,
yeah, Nigel
Cameron.
Farage is going to do a good job, isn't he?
He will. It's always interesting with him, isn't it?
Yeah, but I've seen him live, actually. I saw him at Bloomberg offices, and do you know what? He was actually a very good speaker. He got like a...
You sound surprised.
He got a massive round of applause, and everyone was like cheering. Yeah, but he's quite a divisive character for some people, and he's like, yeah, and that's why people didn't necessarily want him representing the Leave campaign, because, you know, some people will say that UKIP are racist. Other people are saying, you know, that's not the case. And I guess it depends how you view him. He's a divisive character. He's not the type of person. This is essentially tying UKIP to the Leave campaign, and of course UKIP was all about the Leave campaign, but at the same time the Leave campaign is about more than UKIP. You know, there's a lot more to it. It's a lot more of a complex subject. So I guess people probably would have wanted someone that's a little bit more of a serious character rather than a bloke that seems to be in the pub half the time. But
he likes his beard, doesn't he?
Oh, well, yeah, I can't fault him for that.
Nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think immigration will be top of the agenda, though, won't it? Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this is his moment. It's what he's been waiting for.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. So we are long the cables. We're going to watch that throughout the week and see how Josh does. So good luck with your trades as well, and whatever you decide to do, and get those stops on. Goodbye.